Changing measurement in large organizations is about as easy as getting everyone in that organization to all change religions. Drop the click, ignore the click, and focus on the attention metric, which are the impressions. That's what I would do as a brand manager. Tons of research has shown that as brands shifted dollars from branding, if you will, over to performance, what has happened is the ad effectiveness has dropped considerably. In corporate, the big companies, it's more important to be consistent than to be right. With the advent of AI, we can create new creative that used to cost millions of dollars in 5 minutes. Just like my clients are optimizing their media, I'm optimizing my diet.
Hello, fellows. Happy 2026 and welcome. Subscribe to my channel for conversations at the edge with thought leaders from the branding, marketing, and the business world. Hello, Jeff. Great to have you on my show.
Ravi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. Okay. So, Jeff, if I asked you to introduce yourself briefly, what would you say?
I'd say I'm Jeff Greenfield, the co-founder and CEO of Provalytics. It's a marketing measurement platform. We answer that kind of big question, which has always plagued marketers, which is half the money I spend in marketing is wasted. The only problem is I don't know which half. So we solve that problem.
So everybody has been talking about it, Jeff. There's something's not right. Creators have been saying performance marketing is overhyped. You're measuring, but is that all that matters? What about the intangibles? What about creativity? And everybody has been struggling about it. Okay, let's go to that moment, maybe a flashback. That moment in time when you realized something is broken. This is not working.
There was a very specific moment. I was buying media for a publicly traded weight loss company. And when you work with publicly traded companies, you always have to deal with these quarterly numbers. And, sometimes you get a call that says, hey, we have to cut marketing spend 90% like today so we can hit our numbers. And it's 2 weeks for the end of the quarter. And obviously, hey, be smart about it. We don't want to hurt our numbers. So I looked at the numbers, and the numbers were telling us that our least efficient stuff that was going on, the stuff that really wasn't working that well, because we were measuring by last click, this is 2007, was non-brand search terms like fast weight loss and things like that. So we cut them, all the terms, in order to hit the number because brand search looked like it was working well. Remember, this is 2007. And then everything was fine the next week. But by the second week, we got a call from the CEO that said, what is going on? How come we're getting fewer new customers, like 50% newer few customers? And then I realized that, my God, the numbers I was looking at, they seem to be correct, but in reality, they're not correct at all. They paint a view of the truth, which is definitely skewed somewhat towards a different position because it was last click. And what we found out is that obviously people are trying to make a decision to start a new diet. It's a consideration type thing. It's a commitment. It's not like something you buy and you put it in your garage. This is something you actually have to do. So people were doing a lot of searches and then eventually would convert through the brand name. So we weren't seeing a lot of conversion through those upper funnel, if you will, non-brand terms. And so when we cut those, it cut off the top of the funnel. But it took us a couple of weeks to notice the difference. And I think that's one of the aspects that people don't understand about marketing is that there's this immediate effect. The stuff you spend dollars on today give you results today, but also today's results also include all of the stuff days, weeks, and months before where it had an impact on someone, but they didn't act until today. So that's how media actually functions. And so that was the big moment. That was the big moment that said, hey, we got to do something about this. We have to figure out a way to be able to determine which of those terms that are in the upper funnel are actually driving people all the way through the funnel. And that led me to start building out what became one of the first enterprise MTA platforms, C3 Metrics.
So this whole thing that you talk about, click data and non-click data. So
Right.
so far it's always been about the last click. Okay, they clicked and then they purchased. So there is a link, that's all that matters. But if, the other media has contributed for them to like or evaluate or even a word of mouth, all that is not being attributed at all
That's right.
to the purchase. How did this then move forward? And what is the system that you made when you're talking about C3 metrics?
We built out a platform where there was two major aspects to it. One was we put code on the website, very similar to Google Analytics 4, if you will. And the job of that code was to capture every click and every conversion event on the website. And then there was another piece of technology and a tag that would go into the ad server. And that would ride piggyback so that if someone was on a newspaper website reading the news and there was an ad there, it would it would send a signal back to our servers that said, hey, this user 1234, it would assign them an ID. We don't know who they are yet. They've seen an ad. And then eventually, a month, 2 months, even a year later, if they ever visited the website, we could link back all the way back to the first ad they ever saw. It was pretty monumental. And we could link all of this stuff together. And back in the early days, we were able to put tags up in Facebook, in YouTube, Yahoo, even Amazon. So we were able to get that full breadth of all of the digital media that was out there. Now, this was early days before any type of privacy and everything, but we could see everything that was going on. We weren't interested in what exactly every user did, but what we did is we took that user level data and aggregated it up into daily totals to start to learn from it. And then we used machine learning to determine what was working and what was not working for clients on a scale by scale basis. And that was one of the first platforms to ever do it at scale back in the day, which is what led us to gain some of the largest and most prestigious advertisers across the US.
So we'll just step back a little for everybody to get your journey, because it must have been a tough journey. Figuring out something everybody's working with is broken, and you finding a way out of that. From skepticism to determination to belief. We're just going to get those segues for it to be real for the audience. So when the cookie collapsed, it's almost now real for you that yes, non-click data matters. Yes. Then what happened when you course corrected that? Could you show the clients that yes, there is a real causal effect? This data is going to make a difference, and you can better attribute your budgets. Could you take any case example to show that the next step from realizing that it's not working, how did it go about, like step by step, to make it a little easier for us to understand?
So back then in 2008, 2009, I wasn't looking to build a company. I was just looking to solve the problem that we had. That's really what it was. And it was particularly for this one client. And when I built it, I didn't think anyone else had this problem. I just thought it was this one particular client. And what forced me to build it, the simplest solution would have been we had the tag on the website, would have been for the client to get an ad server. But the cost of the ad server for the number of ads they were showing each month was going to be around $85,000 a month. And the CEO said that you have to figure out another way. I'm not going to pay 85 grand a month. So I was like, oh. So I had another project that I was building, and I took two of my developers off of that and said, we just need a little tag. We don't need a whole ad server. It's just something to ride piggyback, is what it was. It was just a little tag that would ride along with all the ads. And I figured we could convince the ad networks to do it because we were trying to figure out measurement for the client. And if it worked for them, they would spend more money in it. Shockingly, everyone went along. And I honestly thought, in fact, when I first built it out, one of my developers said, is this going to be single tenant or multi-tenant? Meaning single tenant, meaning it's just going to be for this one client, or do you want to add other clients? And I said, single tenant. No one else is going to want this. That's what I said. But several months later, I came back and I said, I changed my mind because I talked to some people and people were in disbelief that we had actually solved this problem. And I never went along trying to solve this. What had happened is that we started solving one problem, and then my team kept coming forward with more problems every week. Oh, well, now there's this. What can we do about this? And then the next week was something else. So each week was just we ran into other issues, and we were just trying to figure things out just for this client. That's all it was, just for this client. But what we found for this client is once we put this into place, one of the big shock values for us is that there were some partners that we were spending like $500,000 a month with. Now, this is back, and these are display partners. This is back in 2007, 2008. But there was one partner we were spending $30,000 a month on, which was nothing, small. But what we found is that their ROAS was massive. So we thought, they're huge. This is crazy. We're gonna we're gonna give them 45,000 next month. We did. The ROAS stayed the same. We upped them to 60, stayed the same. We scaled them up to well over $300,000 a month, and their ROAS was still within the numbers that we needed for the client. So what we realized is that without having the proper view, we were blind to what was actually building awareness and driving revenue all the way through the funnel. So it was shocking and surprising for us. Now, this is back during the time when cookies were around. So with that, and with that as a case study and other clients we started working with, I then scaled the technology and scaled the company up to where we had well over 70 employees. And I spent 12 years building this business, and I exited the business about a year before the pandemic, thinking I was done. I did as much as I could. It was fantastic. And I didn't know what I was going to do.
So, accidentally, this got discovered,
Right.
but many clients must be facing it. So far, most of the clients have been in the blind. The very thing going for performance marketing has been that, we have very, very accurate metrics, and hence we can be very effective in marketing. But that has not been the case at all.
No, it hasn't been. And it's because what happened when digital marketing started is we all kind of lost our way. And what we did is that when digital marketing first came out, you remember as marketers, we would spend dollars on things like TV or radio, and all we would get back at the end of the month was an invoice. There was no report. It would tell us how many GRPs, how many impressions there were, but that was it. So what happened around 2005, 2006 is people said, we should start testing this digital stuff. And all of a sudden, at the end of the month, I got back an invoice, but it also said how many clicks I got. Oh my God, as a marketer, I could finally demonstrate I got something for my money. It wasn't this esoteric thing. And so more and more money went to this, and this eventually became performance. So this is still 2010, 2011. So now, fast forward 15 years later, we have a whole generation of marketers who have never been exposed to anything besides digital marketing. And they go from a sale and they go backwards, or they go from a lead and they go backwards. And what comes before a lead or a sale? A click. What does GA4, Google Analytics 4 measure? Clicks. So if I'm a smart marketer and I'm data driven, as they say, I'm going to buy more stuff that has clicks. In fact, I'm such a good marketer, I put it all in a Google sheet and I'm calculating my cost per click, my cost per sale every day, and I know exactly what to do. Of course, forgetting the fact that that is not how marketing works. The way marketing works is we don't invest dollars to buy clicks, we invest dollars to buy attention. And attention leads to awareness. And when awareness is built up enough, people then will walk into our store. If our store happens to be online, then that is clicks. And then that leads to sales or leads. And that's where we got off pace is we focused on that bottom part of the funnel. Tons of research has shown that as brands shifted dollars from branding, if you will, over to performance, what has happened is the ad effectiveness has dropped considerably. We've moved from historically areas where we spent, where the cost was the cost, there was no bid. It's what it was. It's like a Super Bowl ad. They don't bid for Super Bowl ads. They raise the rates each year, but the rate is 8 million, 10 million, whatever it is. You don't get outbid. You just have to get in and get one. Now we're all living environments where we spend the same amount of money this month as we did last month, and we may get 25% less ads because we're competing against each other. So we're all down at the bottom because as performance marketers, hey, well, those people want to buy today. I want to make sure to get them. And we forget about things like brand preference. Like if they happen to have seen an ad before, when they get down and they're ready to buy, they'll be like, oh, I know those guys. I want to go with them. So those are the lessons that today's marketers have completely forgotten. But they're luckily, because of all of the changes that have happened,
Yes,
they're
yes.
about to learn about.
It's almost like, let's not forget we're dealing with human beings. It's like every new phase of, marketing advancement, we somehow slip this fact somewhere. And now AI is coming in again, a huge debate. And, we'll get into how you are using AI into the Provalytics solutions. Uh, but this is very heartening for me to hear as a brand strategist, that brand building really matters and brand building fundamentals matter and new media is there and how people are doing things has changed. But hello, like behavioral science has been saying, how the emotion makes you attentive and hence it builds the memory structures. I mean, that has not changed. Evolutionary principles have not changed us. We've not evolved into another species for that matter. So this is awesome. So I just want to now, for our audience, request you to explain GA4 analytics. So analytics, and then a new version of GA4 analytics. And what was the challenge with GA4?
And we have to kind of go back a bit. Most people who are listening, who are marketing professionals, they know about the concept of a UTM tag, because you have to do UTM source and medium. And, that's always a problem is checking the tagging. But most people don't know where that term, the acronym UTM, comes from. It comes from Urchin Tracking Module. And Urchin is the name of the company, the original company that Google acquired many years ago. Urchin was one of the best web analytics software. And I say web analytics because people have now shortened it to just analytics. But the reality is that GA4 is web or website analytics. That's what it is. It is designed to show you exactly what people do on your website. That's all it ever was. Now, as Google grew and they built out an ads platform, they tried and they were able to accomplish to link these two things together so that inside of Google Analytics, you could see how much you spent each day on your ads. Think about this. It's very similar to Facebook's reporting. When you go into Facebook and you're buying ads, It shows you how much you spent, how many ads were shown, how many clicks there were, so on and so forth. Google's analytics does the same, but it also is showing you exactly what people are doing on your website. And this was working well for many, many years, primarily focused on click because that's what it is. And then when around the time of the pandemic and a little bit before then, with the move towards privacy, the whole advertising ecosystem shifted dramatically. And as a result, there was concerns about tracking an individual, especially if they were searching and they came to your website and you had a health related website, knowing like, for example, that this individual is in this geo and they have diabetes or something like that, especially if you're buying ads. And so what Google did is they required everyone using Google Analytics to update their code, which if you're a small marketer running a Shopify store, it's no big deal. You just go in and cut and paste the new code. But for larger corporations, this was a big deal. This became a massive undertaking where you had to devote time and money and commitment to make this change. But it also highlights as well how fundamental measurement is to most marketing organizations. It touches everything from salaries, size of teams, bonuses. So shifting even from Google Analytics to GA4, even though it was essentially the same product, there were differences that were seen, and that caused some reverberations throughout a lot of companies. And it was one of the first times in many, many years that most companies had actually an initiative around measurement. Now, people would think, and we've talked about this already, that, companies have this problem. Even GA4 is primarily still click-based. They have some attribution models in there, but there's no place inside of GA4 for connected television. There's no place for podcast advertising or digital out of home or any type of regular branding. YouTube is there because YouTube's owned by Google. So it really should be called Google's analytics because that's what it is. It's Google's reporting, but it's been adopted by everyone to be used everywhere. And so what's happened is many larger corporations around the world, they use this as their source of truth even though they know it's far from the truth. They use it because it is consistent. Now, it's consistently wrong, but in corporate, the big, big companies, it's more important to be consistent than to be right. If you had to choose one, you'd rather be consistent, and it is consistent. And what I have found in my experience, changing measurement in large organizations is about as easy as getting everyone in that organization to all change religions. It's a lot of work. Measurement is not plug and play, it's not SaaS. Yes, the platforms, you plug them in and they work and they spit out numbers. But getting people to action on those numbers and move and all row in the same direction, that's a large undertaking. And I always warn all of our prospective clients so that they understand what they're getting themselves into because it is a lot of work and they have to be committed to it.
So, in this situation, when you are talking about how this is not working and there has to be an alternate way and you're building an alternate way, and hasn't there been any pushback from Google and Meta? Has there been? How you've dealt with it?
They control 90% almost of all of the advertising dollars, especially in the digital realm. So but what's interesting is that both of them themselves have already come out with their own marketing mix models. Facebook's is called Robin. So they've already have come out to advertisers and essentially have admitted that their metrics are not complete, are not a complete picture. that their reporting is consistent yet not the best. And that, as I always like to say, there's a less wrong way to measure. But in order for that to happen, companies need to have an initiative and they need to put up budget for it. And many companies scoff at the idea I should dedicate a 0.5% of my marketing budget to measure. That doesn't make any sense. Shouldn't the agencies and the companies that I'm paying for, shouldn't they provide measurement? And it's true, if you spend enough money with Meta, they will provide you with all sorts of independent measurement, but you have to ask yourself, is that's kind of like asking the fox to guard the hen house. You need an independent single source of truth who has no vested interest in terms of which player actually wins. So most of the pushback has not been from those players. It's been from the same marketers and the same companies who say they want a better approach. In fact, I have a call later this week with a prospect that we've been talking with for the last month or so. And I looked through my old emails from my former company. And I have emails from them from 2011. So this is a large corporation that has been dealing with this problem since 2011 and has still not addressed it and has been on last click this whole time. So this is how long, and you talk about human beings and our thought processes and how we deal with things. We don't like things to change. There was a study that was done about how when we go to fill up our tank with gas, we have a favorite gas tank and we like our car to be positioned a certain way. And when people pull up, if their gas tank is taken but others are open, will wait because we don't like change. We
Yeah.
don't like change at all. We resist it as humans at our core. So that's kind of where it's at. The solutions are out there that are definitely less wrong and get significant lift, but they require momentum. And in large organizations, you can't move fast, as you know through your own experience. You come in and move fast, you break things, you break people, and then you're looking for a new job is what ends up happening. So you have to kind of move as fast as the slowest person is moving and make small incremental changes is the key.
It's like a large elephant is going to move very slowly. Uh, But what about the smaller clients? I mean, smaller clients, if they can see this and use this, they really can have an edge over the larger companies because anyways, we are seeing this is happening in every region. The local brands are becoming a mighty challenge for the larger companies because they have their set ways of doing, they have their protocols, they have very senior people, and the smaller company can pivot very quickly and they can see the trends and iterate and try. I mean, the whole idea was for the wonderful thing about digital marketing was that you can iterate.
Some of these startups, it's amazing when this concept of move fast and break things, when you don't have a set budget, when you're not a large company and you have a startup mentality, you're more scrappy and you tend to move fast and you're willing to experiment. And that's why a lot of these startups get acquired by some of the much larger CPG companies. But where they have faced issues uh, recently in the last, I'm going to say 18 months, is they kind of go through a process where they start advertising. It's a direct to consumer buy and it's on their website like a Shopify store, and that works great. And all of a sudden, they start to get pick up in Amazon. So they open an Amazon store. So now, as the head of marketing, you're now measuring this budget over on the website where you've got your Google Analytics or whatever you're running. But now you've got Amazon where you're kind of blind to what's going on there. And then Walmart calls and said, hey, we want to test your product in some stores. and then they want you on Walmart.com. And now you have no idea how do you manage, you have an X amount of dollars in budget, and now you're starting to notice that sales, and this is over the last 18 months, sales on your website, which were consistent, are starting to decline. And what's happened is that consumers, you can convince them to buy a product, but the more places it's available to be purchased, it's up to the consumer to decide where to buy it at. And so now we're dealing with these halos where you're telling someone, buy my product, buy it on my website, and they're not listening. They're going to Amazon to see if it's available. And then they're checking to see if it's available in Walmart and they're looking for the best deal. So this is kind of this kind of grow up that these brands deal with as they get more distribution and they're in more channels. This becomes almost impossible for a CMO to manage because they know how to manage the direct to consumer. Those attribution tools and platforms like ours have been around for years. But how do you look across 5 or 6 other distribution points where there's no analytics? You just know how much money you spend each day and how many ads were shown. So you need a single source of truth to kind of bring it all together. And that's what we enable for these folks to do, is to be able to see across everything. Because the problem you deal with is that someone like an Amazon, they're not going to give you all this data. You can hook up to them through a clean room environment and start looking for your own customers on Amazon and bid on them. But then if you say, hey, I want to do the same thing on Walmart, can I bring my Amazon data over to Walmart? And Amazon's like, no. You could go to Walmart and do your own clean room, but you can't cross-contaminate the information. So it's almost like you have a website where you have almost complete information. You have Amazon, we have complete information. Walmart, we have complete information, but you cannot connect them all together in a deterministic way. So you have to build out these statistical models like what we've done in order to be able to see through it all and be able to see the big picture. So that's been one of the struggles because buying habits have started to shift. And now with the growth of ChatGPT and the rollout of ads, which is coming relatively soon, they just started to announce it. That's going to shift buying behavior even more. And so as a result, brands will be advertising on there. There's even going to be a larger blind spot that's going to be coming soon as a result of that. So the reality is that as a brand and as a marketer, yes, you have to be everywhere the consumers are. And yes, you just have to accept the fact that the amount of data that you're going to have on consumers is going to be less and less. We're living in the world where we have to pan the camera back, but that's a good thing because the last 15 years of us drilling in on that user level data, where this belief set that the more we target someone, the more effective our sales will be. It's like, yes, we can get customers the more we target, but each layer of targeting increases the cost of the ad. So we're gaining customers, but many of them are not profitable. And that's the big takeaway, is that we get business, but we're losing money. And that's not a good thing for brands at all. So panning that camera back, giving us that bigger perspective, but enabling us to be able to optimize in the details is the new way forward. But it's through a lens of not deterministic methodology, but probabilistic. But that works because that's how financial modeling is done. It's all probabilistic models.
Now, we also want to know, how in your modeling, AI models are contributing, what's really changed, and, how you can, get us that kind of probabilistic modeling. But before that, you mentioned clean room. So what is that? And as we look at future of measurement, is that something significant, and why?
Well, it's sexy for big brands. A clean room is where, if I'm like a big CPG company and I've had a bunch of direct to consumer websites going for years, and I have a big loyalty program, and I have, let's say, 2 million customer information email addresses on a list. Let's say I'm a P&G, for example. I can take that data and I can set up a clean room with Amazon. Amazon will anonymize that data. They'll create a hash of the email addresses and find which of their Amazon users are actually P&G customers. And they'll let us know, hey, we have these categories of customers. And they'll let us know when one of my customers is shopping for detergent. Great. So now I can start bidding heavily on that. It becomes a targeting criteria. But the problem with that is, well, maybe they're going to buy my product anyway. See, there's nothing within these ad platforms that's incremental, and that's the issue with it. But for marketers, this is kind of a return to that user level type data, and it feels somewhat deterministic. But again, I think that these methodologies are buying into like the last 20 years, which, based upon what the research has shown, has led brands in the wrong direction because it's taken us away from upper funnel advertising and more branding. I like to tell people that branding is the new growth lane. It's not the new growth lane, it always was the growth lane. But marketers, they just get very excited about the more detail. They figure more is better, and it's like, no, less is always more. A friend of mine years ago said, do you know what the definition of enough is? And I said, what? He said, more. So people still want to get more. They want more detail. It makes them feel better. So these clean rooms are a way to be able to connect your data deterministically so that you can bid on your own customers. It's kind of like, a way to look at it is, years ago when Facebook first started, before they had ads, they said, hey, brands, you can start a Facebook group for your brand. Very exciting. Years ago, brands used to have bulletin boards on their website. They'd have a bulletin board. People could chat. The brand controlled it all. They could put out a message, send out an email. Everyone would get it. Facebook said, hey, we can handle all that with a group. Your people are already here. And brands did it. It was great because they would put up a post and hundreds, thousands of people would respond that were in their group. And then brands started to notice fewer people started to like it. And what happened is that Facebook came along and said, oh, you want to reach everybody in your group, you got to boost it. Essentially, you have to buy an ad. And so that's what this same process is that these are already your customers. You already have their information. So you're boosting, they may already be going to buy your product, or maybe not. Maybe they're buying a competitor's product. But the reality is that you're trying to intercept them right at that moment of sale, whereas the point of marketing and advertising is to be way at the top, to anticipate their needs even before they think about it and create some emotional connection, which is more and more difficult today. I was just reading some research that the average attention span now is 47 seconds. 47 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're interrupted so often. And it also shows that it takes people, once they're interrupted, takes them on average of 20 minutes to get back to doing the same task. So in a typical workday, in order for someone to get caught up, it takes an extra 2 days. So as humans, we're living in this perpetual strange world where we're consistently behind. We're never ever going to be able to get the type of work done that we need to get. And as marketers, we have a very difficult task of trying to get attention from someone who's only going to watch something maybe for 47 seconds, not because they don't find it interesting or not, but because their phone's going to go off or they're going to get distracted from what we're trying to say to them. And what I always tell my clients is I repeat to them the same research that I was taught years ago, which is that 70% of the work we do as marketers is not where we place our ads. It's our creative, what we're saying in the ads and the messaging that comes across. And interestingly enough, over the last 15 or 20 years, that's the area where I see marketers paying the least amount of attention. So many of my clients are running the same creative that they ran a year ago. They haven't refreshed it at all. It's almost like it's a lost art. Now, the thing I can pray for is that with the advent of AI, we can create new creative that used to cost millions of dollars in 5 minutes.
So first of all, an analytics specialist saying this is like, wow. Is like, at least now listen, everyone. Because typically it'd be like, okay, you guys are the creative brand managers, right-brained people. You guys definitely, obviously, would talk about, creativity and brand messaging and understanding people. And, but how much are people different and how much is this going to really help? But now here's an analytics person saying that, guys, this is really, really stretched too far. Let's just put everything in perspective and see, the real picture, zoom out and, see it in reality. So, first of all, that is so heartening. I hope you are also, engaging with students and colleges, uh, the new batch of marketers that are coming, for them to have this healthy skepticism.
Here's where Google was a genius, because if you want to affect a new generation of marketers, the way to do it is to think ahead. And most of us don't think 10 or 20 years ahead. But if you were to think 20 years ahead, you would say, okay, the students who are in classes that are taking marketing who are 20, well, 20 years from now, they'll be in their 40s. And those that go into marketing, they'll be at a director level by then. So if I can impact them. So what's interesting is the analytics courses in colleges, I believe, that were originally written and provided by Google, because people are trained on Google Analytics in college. So that's kind of the interesting thing. So if you really wanted to affect a generation, you'd have to think about high school classes in analytics and statistics and design a class and provide a syllabus for them in order to do that. So we're battling a lot of large forces there, kind of, if you will. In terms of how we do things at Provalytics, it's all based upon this concept of incrementality. So the question is, what do I mean by incremental? What does that really mean? And the best example that I can think of is I was talking to someone the other day who's has an agency that deals specifically with um, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning companies. Okay. And so she is in the job of buying marketing and ads for them to get leads. And she was telling me about how she had an argument the other day with one of her clients, explaining this particular lead came in from Google. And he's like, no, it didn't. These people live next door to the people whose house I was working at for 12 hours. They saw my truck all day long. So think about it. If you have 12 trucks with 12 service people and they're driving along all over town all day long, that's like a driving billboard. And so there's this concept that is, if I wasn't advertising at all, people would see my driving billboard, friends would tell friends, I would still get some business. So if I get at the end of the month, if I have 100 leads that come in, and I get a report from my agency that says, here's how your 100 leads break down, and each one of the leads is going to some paid thing, I'm going to call bogus on that. That doesn't fly with me, because I know that before I advertised, I had business. So that's what marketers want. What we want to focus on is, what is incremental? What is the business, the sales, the leads, the visits to the website that I would not have had if it wasn't for this ad? The gold standard of that is to do something called a geo holdout test. And what I mean by that is, let's say I decide I want to test something new. I want to test connected television. And I'm going to pick one city, Dallas, Texas. And in Dallas, I'm going to blanket Dallas. Now, that's a big market. let's say I do a smaller market. Let's say I go to Jacksonville, Florida. I'm going to blanket Jacksonville, Florida with TV for 30 days, lots and lots of television. And then I'm going to stop television. And then what I'm going to look at is that during that month and for the following 3 months, what do leads look like in Jacksonville compared to all of the other cities in the US, and in particular, cities that are of the same size and makeup demographically of Jacksonville? And if if it appears that there's more leads coming in percentage wise in these other similar cities, that tells me, what did we do different in Jacksonville? Well, we did TV. There's the proof that television worked because we only did one thing different. At Provalytics, we use that as our kind of our core understanding, but we let the machines do it for us. And what I mean by that is that since all of marketing today is on a bid basis, meaning you're bidding for someone and someone is bidding higher. And even if you're spending exactly $100 a day for an ad, that means one day 10 ads are shown, the next day 6 ads, the next day 15 ads. It's always different. And if you take a entire marketing plan over the course of a month and you look at it, you're going to see little ups and downs, little differences. But you're talking not one test, you're talking thousands of tests in a month. It's impossible for a human being to figure out that math. But that's exactly what machines and AI are designed for. So when we take that data and then we go backwards, because we're not looking at users, we're looking at daily data. And all these platforms, we can get at least a year's worth of data. We go back and that enables the AI to be trained. And then we're looking at your website traffic, your sales in store, your sales on your website, all of these KPIs. And that enables the machine to take a look and determine, one, what is the base of business? What things would have looked like if there was no advertising whatsoever? And then determine at a very granular detail, what is the incremental amount that every single ad for every single day is causing? And then from that, once it does all that math, then it goes back and validates itself and ask the model for every single day, here's all the marketing, predict what the sales will be. And then we're able to go in and look at what it predicted and what the actual was. So now we can see what the predictability is, how accurate is the predictability of the marketing platform. And then that's on reporting. Then we ask it to say, next month, I want to spend X amount of dollars. If I do that, what will I get in return? And how should I shift my dollars around? How should I optimize? What is the best combination of media together to make things the most efficient and get me the most gain? And so that's what the platform does. It answers what happened, what worked really well, what kind of worked well, and then what changes should I make, which is the most important thing that executives want to know. They want to know, what are you going to do different next month or today versus yesterday? And that's what our platform answers across all these different platforms. So it provides that single source of truth for marketers.
So Provalytics, if I'll try and say it and tell me if I've got this right. So it's going to look at all the past data and all sources of data, and in a way, it's training AI to form model on actual, what happened, and then predict basis the inputs or whatever we want to know.
Yeah. Now, of course, humans then have to act on it. And humans won't do everything exact that it says because you should never trust a machine 100%. So you say, most humans will say, I like these ideas, I don't like these ideas, or I can't do this because of whatever reason. So then they put the changes into market, and then the engine learns from those changes. and sees them. And then it keeps on predicting, it keeps getting smarter over time. And then as the humans interact with it and as the humans put things into market and make those changes, it continues to learn more and get smarter about the platform.
Jeff, why don't you take an example, one or two examples of, how it would have been without a Provalytics coming to its aid? How would it would have been done earlier, and now, what's the difference? Like, take some real example.
Yeah, we have a health and beauty client of ours, a large one here in the U.S., who was spending a significant amount of money driving traffic to their website to sell their products, and yet sales kept going down, and they couldn't understand why. So then we incorporated their Amazon data, which was a completely separate division, all of their Walmart sales and sales in store. And what we realized is that, as we discussed before, they were actually driving sales and consumer habits were changing. But what we found is that the sales were so strong in the retail media like Walmart and Amazon that the money was more efficient to be spent over in uh, Amazon and Walmart. So they moved dollars over to make things more efficient and saw a significant increase in business as a result of it. So what's interesting is the world that we're in today, it's not a set it and forget it because things are moving so quickly. There's so many new platforms. I mean, think about TikTok, for example. 5 years ago, TikTok was nothing. Now it's massive. What's going to be coming very soon? Who knows? So this is marketing today is like a boxing match. You have to kind of bob and weave to make your way through the round. So you have to constantly be checking where you're at in order to know how to properly optimize.
So we've talked about the challenges. Do you see any real progress happening in terms of in the domain of marketing measurement? We've discussed the inertia. We've talked about how companies move, they don't want to change. And of course, where do you see real progress happening?
I'm encouraged by the fact that there's a lot of new measurement companies that are out there that are focused in the right direction. And they are, all of us are rallying against click-based measurement, including Google and including Facebook. So I I hope I pray that kind of shames some of the marketers and companies realizing that, you know, in a year or two from now, if they're measuring the way they've been for years, that they'll be somewhat embarrassed to even talk about it and kind of force that initiative. So I'm encouraged that things are moving in the right direction. The type of measurement that we're doing used to cost 10, 15 years ago millions of dollars a year for large companies to do. Now it's a tenth of that cost. So that's significantly encouraging. So with the advent of AI and machine learning, the prices have come down considerably. So this is not outside the realm of possibility for companies. So, but it's still going to take, I think, another couple of cycles to get everyone on board and realizing that, okay, there's a better way and we have to do it. And I'm encouraged. Now, I think back to when I started this journey in 2007. It's been a long time to get people here. I remember back in 2007 going out and raising money and marketers saying to me, what is it going to take? How much money is it going to take? Will you need in order to get everybody on board with attribution? And I'm like, we're going to need hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, people don't want to change. So you can't force people to change. And now what's happened is they've been forced to change because the targeting criteria have changed. We've all had to pan back the camera a bit. So the bigger perspective is all there is. So that's forcing people to realize that there's more to see than just clicks. So we're on the right path. I'm definitely encouraged. So we're getting there.
Where
We're
is
definitely getting there.
India? Where is India in this, Jeff? If you could quickly tell about pharma, how is pharma dealing with this?
Most of the history of the large companies that have done marketing mix modeling for the larger US brands, most of that work was all done in India anyway. So I've seen a lot of startups out of India with some of this automation involving marketing mix modeling, which has been wonderful. Uh, when it comes to pharma benefits long term with this. You've never been able to track people through, the health regulations in the US, we call it HIPAA. But with marketing mix modeling and the techniques that we use, we're not tracking individuals. We're tracking daily data that cannot be connected to an individual at all. But we're able to, with pharma, for us, with our pharma clients, we're actually able to track um, media and link it directly to scripts written without tracking individuals at all. Now, that's a probabilistic model. It means that we're using statistical models. Deterministic would mean we'd have to track individuals and track doctors, and legally we can't do that. And that data is not available anyway to actually do. And also the reality is that nobody really knows at the end of the day why people do what they do. You know that as a marketer. But with probabilistic models, what we strive to be, and I said this before, is we strive to be less wrong today than we were yesterday. And that's all we can hope to do. We want to iterate up, but we don't want to fool ourselves into thinking that we're more right. One of our biases is in our models is there's more going on that we don't know than we do know. So we start from that aspect because you have no idea what's going on inside the head of a consumer, especially one that only has 47 seconds before they're going to be interrupted. So we know so little. So as long as we accept that as a given from the beginning, and accept that we're going to be less wrong. We're not going to be more right. We're going to be less wrong. I think that from an ego perspective, that helps us as marketers, I believe, do a better job.
So a marketer now, if a marketer, brand manager listens to this and is shocked or is moved, to do something, okay, what can they do this week?
The DIY, the do-it-yourself methodology for a brand manager is they open up that Google sheet, the one they've been keeping that has everything they've done for the last year. It's usually broken down by day and it's got what they spent money on. It's got all the clicks and their sales or cost per click. You want to go back and for the last year, when you downloaded each of the data from Google or Facebook or wherever to get that click data, there was a metric that you left out that represents attention. And it's that metric that brands use before digital marketing to figure out what was working and what was not working. It's how every large brand that we know as a consumer today measured and determined that things were working. And that column is called impressions. And that's a representation of how many ads were shown each day. So what I would do is that this week I would recreate that Google sheet, but include the column for impressions. And then I would take for the last year by day, the impression column, and I would create a graph. And then I would overlay that on a second axis with the graph of clicks. And then you could do, and then I would push my chair back to get a bigger perspective and look at the spreadsheet. Look at days when clicks were high. And you're going to notice on those days, you're not interested. You'll probably notice that impressions weren't high that day, but they were probably high a couple of days before or even a week or so before. That's what you want to look for because it's that time that is important. And those days that you feel like are somehow correlated to those clicks, dig into those days and see what you did on those days, what ads were showing, what creative was showing, and do more of that stuff versus the clicks. Drop the click, ignore the click, and focus on the attention metric, which are the impressions. That's what I would do as a brand manager. Any brand manager can do that. It doesn't cost them anything except for maybe an hour of time. Really simple.
Very interesting. So this another key thing that you're saying is that It's a cumulative buildup, so it's not like this you saw something and the click is happening, because then you can attribute it to what was shown right there and then, or what click happened. But it's a cumulative buildup of so many mediums, and there is hence a time lag between an exposure or opportunity to see, as we used to call it then, to a click, or and we've just pressurized the click too much. The click is really burdened. It's handling too much responsibility. Poor clicks. Got it. Now, these are different kind of clicks that are going to happen. Here is a rapid fire, Jeff, and you have to be rapid. So, mother's best advice.
Wow, that's a good one. I'm going to say eat more chicken soup.
What would you
Yeah.
do on Mars for fun?
Probably hunt.
One thing no one knows about you.
Most people don't know that I was a chiropractor before. That was another profession.
A book you'd like to gift to all your friends.
It's by Rick Rubin, the famous producer, The Creative Act, A Way of Being. Wonderful, wonderful book. Highly recommended.
Super. Okay. What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Keep playing and having fun.
What's something new happening in your life right now?
Just like my clients are optimizing their media, I'm optimizing my diet.
What's your favorite childhood memory?
Horseback riding.
If you were to devote the rest of your life to philanthropy, what cause would you choose?
Dog rescue.
How would you like strangers to remember you?
That I always had fun.
What's a lesson that took you a long time to learn?
To chill, and that you don't have to, it's not a race.
What's one missed opportunity you wish you could have a second chance at?
Being on the Tonight Show, The
Oh,
Magician,
you were invited. Okay, nice. Which one?
The Carson Show. That's the only one. Johnny Carson is the only one.
Okay, that's a huge compliment to him. Okay, what's next?
That's a great question. I don't know. I'm still enjoying what I'm doing. So what's next is to continue to iterate the company and the product, and to keep playing and having fun.
Okay, what's your jagged edge, which is a gift in your raw form that you feel is a contribution to the world?
My jagged edge would be I'm incredibly transparent and open with people that are close to me, and even strangers like you, Ravi.
Yeah. Superb. You did very well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
did so well. So this is a wrap up. And any online addresses, emails, how can people reach you? If you could share that.
Yeah, the best way is to go to provalytics.com, or they can go to getprova, that's GETPROVA.com, or they can also just find me on LinkedIn as well too. Wonderful, wonderful conversation, and a nice deep dive as well too. We went into a lot detail, which I think is going to be great for many, many listeners.
Thank you so much
Definitely.
for finding your time,
My
and
pleasure. Thank you. It's been
have
a
a great
pleasure.
day.